Alright, Game Bears, it is time for our new episode of Unused Content and Games, and today we have part 2 of Unused Content in Super Paper Mario. Or did I say Super Paper Mario? Super Mario Kart. And we're going to look at the November 29th, 1991 prototype. So let us begin here, but before we truly begin, I do unused content and games like this all the time. If that's your type of thing, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Doing new videos like this every single Friday if you'd like to stay tuned. But anyways, let us continue with this here. This prototype is dated November 29th, 1991. However, it was built on November 7th, 1991, so a few weeks prior. The ROM was discovered in July 24th, 2020 GigaLeak and can be found in this code here as a pre-compiled Intel hex files. As such, no assets, sprites, BG layouts, etc. can be found within it. A lot of the work has been put into the Python script, so if you're interested in doing some research on that, you have the little link here. It's page only, yada, nobody really cares. But anyways, we have Super Mario Kart November 91 setup screen. Here's what this looks like. And we could look at some early maps as well. Mario Circuit 2 and Mario Circuit 4 had more jumps. Excuse me, it had more jumps, that was the question. And Ghost Valley 2 had multiple branching pathways. This and more very early track layouts can be found here. Alright, checkpoint balance and flow maps, which give an idea of what the structure of the track would look like. Since the track layouts themselves are part of the assets not included in the Intel hex files, we cannot be 100% sure that the tracks would have been down to each specific tile placement. For this reason, raw track images cannot be provided here. However, there is a file called drive data, which was used as the checkpoint zone data before December 1991. The data for this file is what will be shown below. Combined with this data will also be data that comes directly from the game itself, specifically the finish line and starting coordinates date. Another one of the lost files is the file of the positions of the overlay objects, item panels, zippers, etc. So there is unfortunately no way to know what the data would have been for the layout position. This prototype includes 21 maps rather than the usual 24, since only one battle map exists in this build. The key to understand the data is found below, and here's a closer look at this here bit of data. Likely to load in different zones across the map. You got the finish line area, you got what certain speeds they want you to go depending on which area you happen to be in. Alright, and race map, Circuit 1, Mario Circuit 3. And here's a closer look at this one. With all those arrows we just saw. And here's the later map with different arrows. Alright, hardware differences. Wait a minute, I went too far back. Alright, just above every zone on the track was reworked. The earlier versions didn't have most of the speed values seen yet. Or set yet. Obeg 1, Ghost Valley 2. And here's a closer look at this one with those arrows. A lot of green arrows everywhere. So if we look at our little data table over here, clearly they wanted us to go at least at speeds of 3 in that specific angle. And here's what it looks like in the later map. Alright, the track originally had multiple branching paths, which would have been pretty neat, and you can kind of see that here and over here. Makes things a little more interesting. But in the end, they took those out. Alright, Grass 1 or Donut Plains 2. And here's a closer look at this. And here's what it looks like later on. Alright, based on the October 91 and April 92 layout, it contains a split path that crosses over the lake with the road at the bottom continuing straight. And Castle 1, Bowser Castle 2, here's a closer look at this. And the later map, especially the one with the little dead end over here, and you got another dead end over here. Those completely negated if you looked at the map. Alright, looks surprisingly similar to the later version. The only real difference is that most of the speed values haven't been set yet. Alright, next up, Ice 1 or Vanilla Lake 2. Here's a closer look at this one. So there is a possibility they could have put all these green arrows here as a way to just test out, like, the turning and stuff if you were to go too fast. That's a possibility before they change it to the values they truly wanted to have. Our road at the top is split into multiple zones, with some of the ones underneath extruding towards the center of the map, suggesting a vastly different layout. Alright, Dart 1, Choco Island 3. And here's a closer look at this one. I did it again. And here is the later version, with a bunch of red arrows instead. Alright, the bottom has a more sharper curve towards the end, which seems to match the track piece found in several .scrs in the source file. The zone on the right makes a more more twisted path. Uses diagonal zone types that go unused later on. Alright, so here for any recreations of this track, no need for that. Alright, Sand 1, Koopa Beach 2. And here's a closer look at this map. And the later one, which is vastly different, as you can see, most notably with this area. The zones on the left go alongside the walls instead of extruding outward into the shallower water section, which may have not existed yet. Alright, Circuit 2 and Mario Circuit 1. Here's a close look at this. And here's the later map. Alright, most of the track zones are reworked. Alright, Obeg 2, Ghost Valley 3, and here's a closer look at this. And the final track. Alright, some of the zones are a bit thinner, as you can see here. Castle 2, or Bowser Castle 3. Closer look at the early version of it. And the final version. One with a little gap there, too. That's not going to be annoying to cross, if y'all know the physics of this game. It seems to be based off the October 91 map, with 2 extrusions of dead ends present. Alright, Dart 2, Choco Island 2. Closer look at this. And the final checkpoints. Alright, the zones on the right don't split into a bigger bulge where the big puddle is in the final. They instead make a short bend. Alright, and now Grass 2, Donut Plains 3. Based off of the 91 map with a split path on the final turn before the finish line, and here's what that looks like. Alright, Ice 2, Vanilla Lake 1. The top right and left quadrant zones are wider, corresponding to a T-shape, while instead in vein, similar in vein to the later 92 April version of the map, and here's what that looks like. Alright, Sand 2, Koopa Beach 1. Most of the checkpoints are reworked. The target placements on the right suggest that the shallower water sections may have less holes. Alright, Circuit 3, Mario Circuit 4. Alright, a different and much shorter layout that contains a jump. Oh no, a jump. It uses the later unused diagonal zone types. I wonder where that jump is that they're talking about. I don't see one. Right, here's a closer look at the final version. Alright, Circuit 4, Mario Circuit 2. Different layout that contains another extra jump at the top. And here's what this looks like. I guess this might be a little jump they're talking about here. Alright, Big 3, Ghost Valley 1. Checkpoints were reworked, and a shortcut was added later on. At Castle 3, Bowser Castle 1. The zones are thinner. Alright, Dart 3, Choco Island 1. The top right turn is much wider. Alright, Grass 3, and Donut Plains 1. Based on the October 91 and April 92 version of the map, the road at the bottom continues straight instead of forming a big twist. Alright, Battle Maps. Battle 1. This map can be understood to be the battle map used in the prototype due to the themes, Donut Plains, starting location, and build dates. This map is internally known as both a backup to the B1 map in the Shigeru car directory, and by Battle 1 in this code over here directory. The former date, October 23rd, 91, and the latter date, October 24th, 91. I remember 91, a DP battle map, and the final DP battle map. This Donut Plains one seems a little unorganized, like why are there just random pillars everywhere? This final one definitely looks much more refined. Interestingly, if we took a look at the remaining data in Drive Data Bin, we actually see a few copies of the same data. It's taking the data that can be used. We obtain the image on the left. This seems to be a remnant of the even earlier GV2 zone data, which can be seen if we directly compare the two pieces of data. And we'll compare them indeed. Would it have made more sense if they scattered these more across the map, or would that give other players too much cover? Perhaps that's why they changed it to something a little more simplified, like this. Alright, and GV2 early data. Here's this one, before all those errors were put down. Just a little map skeleton, it looks like. And the actual November 91 GV2 checkpoint data with the arrows in it. That's it for that part. And now we just look at hardware differences. ROM. This prototype requires the use of a 1 megabyte ROM, whereas the final game fits comfortably into a 512 kilobyte one. None of the banks of the ROM utilize any data in the regions with this code here. SRAM. Data that is saved to SRAM in this prototype saves to a larger and different area of memory, indicating the use of a larger SRAM chip during development. Comparisons of the specs below, and here are the specs here. Alright, sound effects DOS. This prototype makes use of a special in-house operating system intended to work on in-house development hardware. The software is known as Sound Effects DOS, and in-game, it allows files to be saved between sessions by reading and writing data to an external floppy disk. This feature is used in the ED1 and ED2 modes. Alright, general differences. The boot-up screen, the title menu, race results, podium, kart select, and world select screens are not implemented yet. They just weren't made, simple as that. This type does not include a sound driver, so there is no sound included in this prototype. The game modes available in this build are Race and Bat Battle. I guess short for battle is what they're saying. There are unfinished prototypes for battle mode, test, and gun. This prototype uses the early item box graphics, showing 1P and 2P rather than 1 and 2. And here's a closer look at that. Uses the fonts on the right for most debugging purposes. The two high fonts is not found in the final release. And debugging editor mode can be used. Alright, in race, drifting and hopping are not implemented in this version. However, drifting is mentioned in the source files, but at this time, it is unsure how it was supposed to be executed. Likely because it wasn't given a button prompt yet. It's possible to turn around while standing. Alright, coins and lives are not implemented yet. Lightning Boo and the ×2 coin items are not implemented yet. There are unfinished items, one of which evolved into the poison mushroom in the final game. AI players don't use items yet. Simply weren't programmed to. When being in the underwater states, the driver is still visible under the water. And Leica 2 does not pick up the driver when being underwater. Leica 2's rescuing animations are unfinished. Driver will rise up the screen immediately when going out of bounds. If two drivers hit the front of each other at full speed, they both bounce in opposite directions and spin, similar to being hit by a banana. The timer is not capped at 9 hours, 59 minutes, 99 seconds. It counts all the way up to that maximum time and loops back to 0 right after. I mean, if you have the patience to wait for that long, go ahead. When falling off the track and splashing effects is briefly shown. Other drivers seen in the distance are a bit shaky, similar to the 91 Alpha. There is no pause screen when pausing the game by pressing start. And when racing to the goal or at the end of the race, the game won't fade out to any other screen and stay at the race. There is also no winning animations yet, and the driver camera simply locks when driving over the finish line. Alright, here's a closer look at the November 91 fonts. Alright, debugging controls. Soft reset. You can exit any mode and go back to the main menu by pressing Start Select YB. Many RAM view editors, hold down LR and press Select. For this one, hold up LR and press Select once again. Item debugger. Hold LR, X, and then press A. The X will be displayed on the top left. This letter graphic got later replaced by the Boo item graphic. Frame advance. When the game is paused, press R will advance one frame like in the Alpha 91 build. Alright, some minor bugs. Not initializing RAM on boot causes a lot of very unpredictable bugs. Clear mode does not function properly in ED1 mode after loading data via LRAM or LDisk. The diagonal AI zones are immediately or slightly misprogrammed, meaning that they do not work correctly in the regular races. This is what most likely led to the diagonal point not being used in later prototypes. Castle 1 AI data has issues with sound effects DOS, saving and loading for ED1 modes. Since the checkpoint data is larger than the allocated space, it is in fact too large by exactly 2 frames, technically 3 since the last zone takes up the space needed in the end table. This indicates that maximum number of checkpoints allowed uses the editors is 0x3F, making 0x3E the maximum stable checkpoint index for the ED1 mode. This bug can only be encountered if you set the file name properly. Alright, in race, boost panels do not properly work in this version, causing the AI to not be able to make it over some jumps. Touching a wall while being underwater causes the driver to jump into the wall and immediately get stuck. And when someone crashes into your cart while standing still, you won't get pushed away with any momentum. Instead, only moved some tiles away and standing still eventually. Crashing into another driver while using a mushroom will cause the same effect on them. And track-specific things. Lots of starting position data conflicts will finish with finish line data, which means some races can't be completed normally. Attempting to run the data 1 track in race mode will crash the game, so don't do that. 3 castle Its standing line or starting line data is completely missing, which messing up the starting line data of the tracks that came after. Grass 3 is not completable, since the data regarding the finish line placement is out of bounds of the normal table, and instead reads for different data. At the main menu, there are 6 different selections from the mode options. In order, they are these options here. Funny, it would be funny if it said Capcom there or something. Whatever. For each section, the first part indicates the mode of the top screen, and the second part indicates the mode of the bottom screen. The functions of each mode are as follows. Man indicates that the screen will be used for a user-controlled racer, nothing too special. Com for computer AI-controlled racers. And Mon, indicating that the screen would be used as a monitor screen. Let's see here for more in-depth information on the Mon mode. Alright, play 1 and play 2. These control the characters that will be used for player 1 and player 2 respectively. One on the top screen, one on the bottom screen. The names displayed are internal names for each character, who are as follows, Mario, Luigi, Koopa, or Bowser. Koopa is his Japanese name for those who did not know. It's changed from the Alpha prototype where it was Koopa with a U. Peach Kong, or DK Jr., not Donkey Kong himself for some reason. Koopa Troopa, Toad, or Kino, Nogo, and Yoshi, or Yoshi as you can see. Are DISP1 and DISP2. And these controls how the Mon screen will be displayed for DISP1, top screen, DISP2, the bottom screen. The screen will be monitored on seems to always be dimmed. The different display modes are as follows. And I'll pause right here if everyone would like to take a second to read that. Alright, let's take a closer look at each of these different screens. Alright, no one. The sprites are not resized to be larger. Instead, they are sized according to their distance of the map screen cameras. Also, unlike the final game's map screen, these modes display the track objects, pipe, mole, bubbles, flowers, cheeps, etc. Also using the sprite size according to the distance of the camera. And prog or race. The race mode during this stage in development is mostly finished at this time. Each race contains 8 players and 5 lap drive around the track files that are like the final game. However, at this point in development, the Prix mode does not exist. When the player finishes the race, the camera no longer turns with the racer but will follow the racer's position, like in the SD view mode. Interestingly, the finished racers' sidebars in the final game is slightly different in this version. Instead of only showing racers as they finish the race, the entire set of 8 is displayed at all times, and will automatically update during the race to show the racers' positions. In effect, this acts similarly to the sidebars in Mario Kart 64, but instead of only showing the top 4 racers' positions, it will show all 8 players. Unlike later prototypes, this prototype does not include any life counters or a coin counter. Neither of those exist at this point in development, so there are no HUD elements showing the lives or coins. Our battle mode. The battle mode stage in development is highly unfinished. This build includes 2 battle modes, which internally are called Test and Gun. Both of these battle modes are merely proof of concept ideas, and no implementation of any way to win the battle. The battle modes are selected by the Battle OBJ option or object in the ED3 mode. Test battle, in quotations. This mode consists of 12 objects moving around the battlefield on the top screen. These objects are displayed as 3D coins, which have an animation time. However, on the bottom screen, these objects appear as the balloon and you see in the final version of the game. I will be referring to this object as coin for brevity's sake. This mode has a few bugs, however. It seems that the coins are meant to have collision, but due to a bug in the code, each coin can only collide with another object once before losing the ability to interact with it. Due to unclean RAMs, the coins that are located between that code there have the collisions-based RAM as the garbage bits. This means that sometimes these objects will not start with the ability to be collided with. The bound power value in ED3 menu sets besides the knockback value the speed of the object. If by luck you are able to touch the objects without the collision bug, they will be kicked away by the player's momentum, kinda like kicking a ball away. Depending on how much speed you kick the object with the object, you gain more speed. It's just called momentum, my dude. Sometimes, however, you are hit on contact, as if you run over a banana peel. After some time, the object stops moving until they are kicked by the player. Items are completely disabled in this mode, and even using the item debug option, no items will take effect in this mode. It could be assumed that the goal could be to kick the object like soccer balls. And looking at the battle mode with the solid target line, it could be possible you're supposed to kick it into the opponent's field, similar to volleyball. However, due to the nature of how this battle mode looks, fans refer to this mode as coin collection mode. However, it is unverified whether this mode has a connection to the coin collector battles seen in later games in the series. Alright, here's a close look at this. And ball kicking. Alright, the gun battle. This mode consists of two players holding an object behind them, similar to how you can hold a shell banana in later games in the series. When the player presses LR, the player fires their respective object forward, and it disappears after a certain amount of time from the top screen. The object appears as a 3D coin mentioned above, and for the bottom screen, the object appears as a balloon mentioned above. These objects act like green shells with a limited lifetime, and are able to bounce off the walls. When the objects collide with the player, it also acts similarly to a shell, spinning the player out. There is no limit to how fast you are able to fire these objects. However, the limited storage space of the game means you are unable to fire an infinite amount. However, you are able to rapid fire these objects, and considering the internal name of this mode is gun, this is very likely that the bound mode is the machine gun mode, referenced in his developer's interview. Items are completely disabled in this mode, and even using the item debug option, no items will have effect in this mode. This mode also does not have a scoring system, so there is no way to win the battle. And drivers will also constantly turn their heads during this mode, since they recognize the items they are carrying behind them as similar to a racer, which is when they usually would turn their heads. There are animations for these objects. Closer look at the coins. And those little balloons. Alright, so for the rest of this mode, I think that's where we'll end off for this here episode. We'll continue with this build over here, as well as the next part of the build of this game. So if y'all enjoyed this edition of Unused Content and Games, and you want to see more, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. And consider it a question today, as usual, of all the unused content we've seen today, which one would you like to see in the final game and why? Let us know in the comments below. We'll continue with part 3 next Friday. Anyways, thank y'all for watching. Hope you learned something new today and have a berrific day. Oh wait, before I end this, what I would have liked to see in the final game, this balloon mode here seems really cool. Just wanted to add to that real quick. And as I mentioned, thank you everybody for watching, and have a berrific day.